Let's just riff. Let's just riff it up.
Let's just riff it up. Today on our weekly discussion, Mark and I are talking about the animated movie Flow.
We are talking about the spectacle of a movie, Avatar: Fire and Ash.
And chatting a little bit about art and its place in the real world.
We would like to thank our channel members for your continued support. We truly, truly appreciate it. We could not do this without you.
Now, let's get into the episode. This week, I watched something by a Latvian director that takes place in a post-apocalyptic world.
Did you say Latvian?
Latvian, yeah, like from Latvia.
Okay.
And if you heard these two things out of context, your gut reaction would probably be like, Sterling's doing his usual thing, and he's doing some artsy, sci-fi-ish thing. And you would be right to think that because I did a really bad job of leaning into it. And I kind of made you think that because that's the way that I normally is. But this was last year's winner for Best Animated Film by Gins Zilbalodis. It is Flow from 2024.
Okay.
It's an animated film about a solitary cat that experiences a devastating natural disaster that who knows if it takes place on the entire Earth or not, that then has to kind of adapt to the new life that the cat is presented with. And this is such a cool film because, I mean, this isn't your stereotypical post-apocalyptic, universe, because this is something that is happening to animals instead of necessarily to humans. The film is actually devoid of actual people without necessarily being devoid of the presence of humans in this world. So you can definitely see their footprint on the world.
Okay.
And it's kind of cool because it's not your typical 3D computer animation. It's, at first, it looks a little bit more basic. It doesn't have the kind of detail that you would expect in a Pixar film where you can see like every single hair. In fact, you can see absolutely none of the hairs on the animals in this kind of natural setting. And yet there is still real beauty to it. So it still ends up being beautifully animated. The movie doesn't have any dialogue in it. It tells this story, 1 hour, 25-minute story.
Whoa.
Without a single word. And yet it doesn't feel like it's moving too slowly, or there isn't interesting, action, or there's actually humor in the film, even though there aren't any words. There's a lot of really cool storytelling, between the lack of dialogue, long takes in this, which I know aren't necessarily impressive with something that's animated versus, something in real life where it's harder to do long takes. But I do think that the long takes can kind of almost make the camera and thereby the audience feel like they are in it, because you're not like constantly cutting between shots and getting these like cuts and feeling this kind of like omniscient look. It makes it feel much more grounded, like whoever is recording this is right there and has a real perspective and point of view.
I mean, there's movies that try to achieve the whole movie is made in one take. I know
1917.
1917. Yeah, that one and Birdman.
Yes.
With Michael Keaton.
Yes.
All go for that long take. The long take is one of my favorite.
It's a real cool. Now, the whole thing isn't all in one take.
No. Of course not.
But there are many of those kind of long takes, which is interesting because it even if it's not tough to, deal with a long take when you're not dealing with like actual filmmaking, because you don't have flubs, you don't have people like missing their marks. It still is, I think, a little tougher to tell an interesting story with long takes, to not have to have cuts that allow you different perspectives, or allow you to cut out less interesting periods of time, and still have something that's kind of engaging. There is truly surprising humor in this that as soon as you see it, it both surprises you because you didn't expect it, but then also it's like, of course that happened. Like this, there are scenes that are like so much the animals. At one point, something gets put next to the cat, and like the cat bats it off, and it's just like such a cat-like thing to do that it just really kind of like gets a kind of laugh out of you. I told you that it's not crazily detailed in it, and yet they nail, I think, like the three most important things with animals with expressiveness, which is like the eyes, the ears, and the tail. Mm-hmm. That animals can be so expressive with these body parts, and the animals in this film, and there's a wide variety. There's, cat, capybara, dog, lemurs, ocean animals. They're so expressive without, I don't feel like their features were anthropomorphized. I don't feel like they were changed in order to make them more expressive. And instead, it just kind of relied on the traits of these animals to kind of give those expressions. And that kind of made it interesting because I feel like, it's very much like the animals that we have in our lives. If you're an animal person that has a pet in your life, and I know that we oftentimes, it's us assigning these emotions on them. They may not actually have them, but they still feel so real. And that's very much how this felt, where it didn't feel like it was through dialogue because the animals didn't speak. It wasn't through, like the way that they were drawn, that like gave them extra expression, that they still came off as expressive like the animals that live around us. I thought it was beautiful.
And that's the expression thing. I know that Disney gets around that with a lot of their animated movies that have animal characters. They give them really expressive eyebrows, really big eyes.
Maybe the cheeks can move a little bit. The crinkles around the eyes. You can, yeah.
Which then was the problem with the live action Lion King when they tried
the opposite.
Well, yeah, because they're like, oh, we can't give them expressions. And so there's all these crazy moments happening and they have just normal animal faces. So, but I do think that one, has the problem of it has so much dialogue in it that it has to be expressive.
I was going to say the dialogue is potentially giving one emotion. Right. And then the animal face isn't giving the appropriate like physical reaction you would expect with that dialogue. But this doesn't have to deal with that problem.
Which I think that's a great way to, like, if you can animate a movie and do it without dialogue, as well as not making over the top expressions on animals that wouldn't make those normal expressions, and can tell a compelling story. Hell, it won Best Animated Feature. That's impressive. Right. So I might have to check this one out. What would you rate it, and where did you watch it?
I'd give it an 8 out of 10. I watched this one on HBO Max.
Okay.
So it is currently available for free on that platform. Feel free to watch it. I feel like it is something that crosses a lot of boundaries because it doesn't require language, so it doesn't need to be translated. It doesn't have to have, like captions for it. You can enjoy it regardless. And I think the choice of not having language in it also means that it is, you do have to fill in some of the gaps. You do have to do some of the work. This isn't completely passive viewing, but I think it also makes it be something that anybody can enjoy, and it doesn't necessarily feel like it is force feeding a message. So for instance, I actually do think that there is, really interesting things here that could tie into climate change and could tie into a message about, maybe doing things about that. But that's 1000% not explicit. And I think that many people may not feel that about that. And I think that there are, people on the other side that aren't going to feel like this is a preachy thing that is trying to tell us this message, because there is so little that is really explicit in it. And so you can it's kind of like a canvas that everybody gets to fill. It definitely starts the story for you, but you fill some of the gaps with kind of your own understanding. And so I think that makes it something that people across different boundaries, across different borders can enjoy regardless. I know that this kind of storytelling isn't going to hit for everybody, because some people like things to be explicit. They like a little bit more hand-holding. This is not going to give that to you, but I still thought it was a beautifully told tale.
Well, you've piqued my curiosity, and now I would love to watch that. I won't use it for my weekly catch-up, but it's fine. It's fine. So I went a complete opposite direction as you. Something that
all words and no visuals.
No, it is a lot of visuals, actually. I just meant more not as...
All humans, no animals.
Kind of. It's... No, it's still all animals. Okay, maybe it is a little bit closer to what you had than what I watched is Avatar 3.
Okay.
And so this was the second time watching this, and I know that the Avatar movies get a lot of criticism of not really... They're like white rice and chicken, there's not... with no seasoning. They're just kind of their own thing. And, I think they get a lot of hate. I think they get a lot of undeserved hate. I think it is hard to enjoy them on a smaller screen. I do think there is the draw of these movies to go see them in theaters, to see them in the big screen. The first time I saw it in December, I saw it in the 4D, where you actually are in a roller coaster ride. And that is hands down so fun to watch these movies in. I think that they're movies that benefit from the gimmick of having smells, and it makes you feel like you're in the world. So on this...
They're one of the few movies that I actually think that 3D is a solid use, because I remember when the first one came out, that I watched that in 3D. I think I watched the Doctor Strange movie in 3D, because there was one scene where time gets stopped and there's a lot of stuff that just went into the air. Yeah. And so there's like a cool scene for 3D. There was literally one scene built for 3D, but it's not like the entire movie was built for that. And I do think that James Cameron's, at least his Avatar movies, are technological feats. And that one of the things is that they are beautifully 3D rendered and are kind of meant for that experience. So I can definitely see that.
And I think I agree. And I think that they say that there's not a huge message, but ultimately it does have a message of, being one with nature and respecting the earth, and not just taking natural resources for your own benefit just because you can. I think it's very explicit messaging on that. I swear the very first Avatar, it looks great, but the way these movies look now, they feel so real. It feels, when you're looking at the blue people, the Na'vi, if you will, they look like real people. Like I forget I'm watching a CGI movie, and it's impressive. And overall, maybe this story isn't as deep and rich as potentially the first story. I do think that the second and third one are very similar in a lot of ways, and could ultimately be one movie that you just watch in one go, whatever 6 hours that would be or whatever. But honestly, they're a fun time. I enjoy the performances in them. I enjoy the messaging into them. The action scenes are very cool. And yeah, I think that it gets a lot of hate, but ultimately I like these movies.
I mean, they've made a ton of money, so they clearly appeal to people. I think that they are technologically, they are amazing world building as far as, creating the different animals that live in this world and the different environments and why certain animals would be in certain environments. There is a lot of time spent on that. And so I think they are a feast for the senses. They are something that like your eyes can appreciate some of the most beautiful visuals that you are going to see. The world looks and feels very real. Mm-hmm. For me, the focus on storytelling doesn't like quite match up with that, but it's the sight of it is absolutely amazing. And you mentioned something about the not necessarily having a message. I disagree. I mean, you disagree with that. Yeah, I also disagree with people that have said that. I just think for me it was like it had already been said in what was the
Dances with Wolves, Fern Gully.
No, there was Fern Gully, the cartoon. Yes.
Yeah.
For me, it kind of like already been said. So this was just kind of like the most beautiful CGI version of something like that. This big spectacle, but not like there's no message.
Yeah.
So
no,
and I'm not judging people for seeing that. I saw the first one in theaters in 3D. I didn't go to the theaters for the second one. Oh. And I think I will see the third one. I'm not the type that's probably going to go to the theaters. It's probably already gone at this point. For that, but I probably am going to see the third one.
I do think that they benefit being seen in the theaters a little bit more. Like, I know they are.
I get it. Yeah.
I also get where you're coming from.
There's just a cost attached. And then on top of that, you're saying that not only do I need to see it in the theater, but I need to see it in the 5D seats.
No. I'm not saying that actually. So
you said it like it was better.
Well, I think that James Cameron is selling this as an experience, not just a movie. They attach the 5D, the 3D or whatever. But actually, what I was going to say is the time I just watched it, this recent time, I just watched it just in theaters. No 3D, no wiggly cars, just sit down, watch it. And I think it just, the music, the visuals, the like really deep sound bass that you get out of it at a theater that you just can't really get at home. I think all of that is really enjoyable for these movies. Yeah, you could watch it at home, and I know that at home it's still an experience that you can get, but I think ultimately it does deserve to be watched in theaters. And it's okay if you're not going to go see it in theaters. I won't judge you.
And there's an argument that James Cameron needs you to watch this in theaters.
I need you to watch it in theaters so 4 and 5 can come out.
Yes, because there is the cost of it is so obscene that it needs that movie theater money.
And I would also argue that the new ones do have a little bit more messages that are not just protect the earth. You know, there is family dynamics. There is an aspect of who is your family, found family. There's ideas of resenting someone that might be very similar to you because you hate these certain pieces of yourself, and you see that in somebody else, like your child, and you can't recognize that you're frustrated at your child because that child is basically you and would do what you would be doing in the same situation. There's a lot about like if you should sacrifice a loved one in perhaps saving the greater good. And it's, I think there's some really interesting topics that it dives into, it explores, and it is a little religious. It has a couple of religious symbolism, I would say.
Yeah.
But I think overall, great flick. It is a little long, you know, trim it down a bit, maybe come out some of the fillery part, but I love it. I think it's great.
He also continues to develop new technology that, and he has waited to release some of these until the appropriate technology has been developed. I think that 3D was very important for the first Avatar. Some kind of new underwater filming technology was important, I think, for the second one. And so he's a man who has a vision and will spend whatever kind of money, wait whatever kind of time in order to fulfill that vision. And I give him mad props for that. And the Avatar films may not be the top for me, but they're not bad films by any means in my books. And there are many of his films that I've very much enjoyed, you know, like Titanic,
Terminator 2.
Was it The Abyss?
Terminator 2. Yeah, The Abyss.
Yeah, so I've very much enjoyed his films.
I think like 3 of like the top 7 grossing films are his. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's wild.
Yeah.
He's James Cameron.
I do have one extra little surprise for the week, which is it may not be a film, but it is the arts, and it was very interesting, and I think kind of can spark some interesting conversation. So
okay.
Don and I went to Little Tokyo in Los Angeles. There are 4 Japan towns in the country, with LA having 2 of them and Little Tokyo being the largest in the country. And over there, they had, right on the edge of it, there was a museum, MoCA, M-O-C-A, Museum of Contemporary Art. And they had an exhibit which was called Monuments. And it was really cool because, you know, I love art. Most of the people around me don't love art. And so I don't really get to share it with the people around me. And Dawn is kind, and she'll sometimes come along with me and, you know, in order to humor me, but it's not something that she necessarily loves. You know, if there is a good exhibit that provides appropriate context for what's in it, then she might enjoy it. Anyways, this one was really interesting because Monuments is in reference to a number of the monuments, most of them around the Civil War, that they decided to remove. And there's very interesting context around these monuments, you know, so like some of them were defaced. And so there is, you know, there's graffiti on them, and it is interesting seeing the context of that graffiti with the time and place of some of the things that happen around them, you know, whether or not there was like a killing around that time that really incited people to act out, you know, after that happened. Some of the Some of the monuments they put up there completely intact, where there's like nothing that happened to them, no spray paint. Some of them had spray paint on them, so a bunch of them have been already melted down into these like bricks so that they can be used for something different in the future. And the bricks have these stamps on them saying, I think it was like swords into plowshares. And so it's cool seeing something in this intermediary state.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think for me, one of the most impactful was there was a statue, Vindicatrix, I think it was called, which I think is based off of like the word of like vindication. That, you know, it was believed, this idea that that like the Confederacy was right, and that the Confederacy will at some point rise again. And there's this statue that's holding its hand up, which I think was very much like a monument of that belief of like the Confederacy will rise. And so some of the exhibit, or some of the art in the exhibit was just like real things from the real world, just with extra context added to them, you know? So whether it's like an untouched statue or a statue that other people touched, but like no other artists added to it. It was just kind of being shown and then given context. And then there was art in addition to that kind of helped, whether it was photos or sculptures. And this was the really interesting one, was somebody took that statue and there was this extremely shiny black material. They had it facing that, so you could only see it kind of from the back. And it was, you know, so there was like a corner of this shiny black material that it was staring into. And as we were going through the exhibit, we kept seeing screens with this like hand raised in the air. And when we finally got to that statue, we saw that the hand is that hand, and that there is live CCTV, you know, so like live footage of that hand that's being shot and screened to all of these screens throughout the exhibit. And it's almost kind of like testing that, like, is the South really going to rise? Because we're all watching here, you know? So it's almost like calling that bluff of like, that's what you're saying, and we're all watching. And it was interesting having seen that hand throughout without the context of like, what is this? And then finally getting to that and seeing that we've been watching it the whole time.
Interesting. I mean,
so
I don't think it's going to rise again. They were only around for like 4 years. They haven't come back yet. They ain't coming back.
Yeah.
Get the South out of here.
It was kind of cool seeing that. And it was cool seeing that in the context of LA, because as we were going to that building, there's literally spray paint all over the place that says "fuck ICE." So like, these are the kind of things that are causing people to act out and feel like they need to express themselves in this manner. You know, maybe that's illegal. It is still a form of expression, regardless of if it is. And it was interesting also seeing, you know, some of that graffiti in the exhibit, that these moments where people feel like they need to express themselves. So,
I mean, that's a tale as old as time. In any, you know, political revolution, there's always a huge amount of art that is related to that, to express the frustrations of what is going on. And I think there in Andor, there was a thing I think the director was working with that, or I don't know if it was in Andor or not, but they were talking with Jon Favreau. Somebody was talking with Jon Favreau, and they had started things up, and he was like, no, if there is a political revolution, or if there's a dissent of the people at the powers that be, there will be art and graffiti and guerrilla tagging of things to show the
sentiment, the outrage, the feelings.
Yes, the sentiment that the people's sentiment towards what's going on. And I feel like we are seeing a lot of that now with things with ICE going on, or this administration. There is a lot of people that are not happy with what is going on, and there is a lot of art connected to that, and people getting their voices out there to be heard, to say it, in a way, us even talk about it. This is our art talking about this exact thing. So,
and it's interesting because it also then makes you ask the question of what is art, because there is art that governments can commission in order to say certain messages. So a lot of this art from the South was commissioned around, like, during or after the Civil War, in order to kind of further that legacy. When we were in Italy, in Florence, there is a statue right in one of the main piazzas, one of the main squares, of I don't remember who it is, in maybe Perseus in Greek mythology, that killed Medusa. And it's Perseus holding Medusa's severed head. But it is also a statement from the government of violence against against going against law. So it's a statement of law and order saying, if you do bad things, this will be your severed head that is here. Because that's right there in the square, letting you know that there are consequences for your actions. And so there is beautiful art like that can be an expression from the government. There is, art that may not go in galleries, like people graffitiing things, that still is an expression of people's emotions and thoughts. And then you can take a combination of these things, and just by putting them in a gallery in context with other things, can become a new art in and of themselves, because now there's extra context around seeing art from the government, or graffiti from people angry against the government, or it's just wild how these things can speak to us and what they are. And it was a reminder that, like, you can, not all art museums, especially contemporary and modern art museums, are going to hit like that for most people, but it is worth maybe looking at what's around you to see if there's anything interesting, because there are, I think, things that can speak to everybody that's not what you consider to be, current art, that maybe you're not interested in.
Sure. And if art is an expression of the soul, and then you see the people coming out with these installations that are having a politically charged statement, or are against the government or for the government, if that is an expression of the soul, then what is that saying about the souls of the people that are not happy with certain things, or are happy with certain, it's right. I think that's why, people are always like, you can't live this life and not have a little bit of interest in what's going on politically. Right. And so when people feel the need to express this stuff, make these statements, I think that shows that the broader problem with what's going on and why these things are important to people to express themselves.
Absolutely.